Om Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matirupena Samastita Namastasya 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 Namo Namah Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shantirupena Samastita Namastasya 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 Namo Namah Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shaktirupena Samastita Namastasya 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 Namo Namah. I bow down to that goddess who dwells in all beings as the mother. I bow down to her again and again. I bow down to that goddess who dwells in all beings as peace. I bow down to her again and again. I bow down to that goddess who dwells in all beings as power, strength. I bow down to her again and again. From the Chonji. We hear 4 times Namastasya, 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 Namo Namah. The first Namastasya, first bow down to that goddess, the cosmic gross form of the universe. The second bow down to that goddess who dwells in all beings as subtle universe. And the third Namastasya means I bow down to that goddess who dwells in all beings as the causality of this universe. And the first and the last one, Namo Namah. Last Nama is the transcendental form of the mother, as cosmic consciousness. What Namo means? Namamo, not I. That means you will have to efface your ego before you attain the mother. Anyhow, today we are very happy that we have a wonderful guest, Swami Sarvapriyananda. He will speak on the Divine Mother, Shakti of Brahman. Last Sunday we performed the ritualistic worship of the Mother. Today is our annual anniversary service. Swami Sarvapriyananda came here few times. He is a monk of the Ramakrishna order. He joined in 1994 and got his final vows in 2004. He was a teacher of monks, brahmacharis in the training center. Then he was transferred to Hollywood. There he stayed for a year. Then he is now the head of the Vedanta Society of New York. Very important center. That center was established by Swami Vivekananda himself in 1894. That is the first Vedanta Society in the West. So he is now the head of that center. He is a very popular speaker and a very good sadhu. That is the most important thing, sadhu. And he gives classes on Advaita Vedanta all over the country. So yesterday we had a big endowment lecture in Kansas City, in the university campus. So both of us spoke. We spoke God here and now, living with God here and now. And today he will speak about, as I mentioned, the Divine Mother Shakti of Brahman. And this afternoon he will return to New York. So I told him that please come and we shall go together to St. Louis. You give a lecture and you will go. He's a very busy person now. So we are very happy that he is with us. Thank you. Swami Sarvapriyananda will speak.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning, everybody. I offer my salutations to revered Swami Chetanananda Ji Maharaj and other revered monks. And thank you for having me here this morning. Many of you who are used to me speaking about non-dual Vedanta, well, you are in for something else different today. The subject is different. What the Swami asked me to speak about is Shakti, the power of Brahman. This was actually a bone of contention between Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda, later in this country, he says that I fought with my master for 6 long years. And the main issue over which he fought was the worship of Kali, was the worship of Shakti. He said, how I hated Kali and her ways. And yet he made me over to her and she made a slave of me. In fact, it is because of Kali, it is because of Shakti that Vivekananda, Narendranath becomes Vivekananda. He comes to the West. The Vedanta societies are here today. The floodgates of the accumulated spiritual treasures of the East have flowed to the West over the last 125 years. And which is why you are here today and I'm here today also. So it is a very central subject. But yes, Swami Vivekananda, when he came to the West in 1895, after starting the Vedanta Society of New York, he goes to Thousand Island Park in St. Lawrence River, and he stayed there for 6 weeks, and he taught a small group of disciples. And that became the well-known Inspired Talks. And there, in the Inspired Talks, I found in one day he has given a talk about exactly my subject, what I'm going to talk about today. And it's only 1 page, but I found there so much material, it could be a book. Every sentence there could be a chapter in a book. So I thought I would summarize what he said, but you cannot match Swami Vivekananda's language. So I will read out what he said there about the Divine Mother, about Shakti. But the story about him and the Divine Mother is well known to all of us. How he would avoid going to the temple of Kali, and he in fact even discouraged Rakhal, who later became Swami Brahmananda, because they were all members of this well-known Hindu reform movement of the 19th century, the Brahmo Samaj, who were against any kind of worship in images. And so Narendranath would tell Rakhal that you have signed up for that. Why are you going to that temple and worshipping that image? And Rakhal, who was of a very sensitive and soft nature, started avoiding Narendranath. Till Sri Ramakrishna found out and scolded Narendranath. He said, can everybody go straight to the transcendent aspect of the reality? Let people go in their own way. Why are you discouraging Rakhal? It so happened that Narendranath had fallen upon hard times, and he came to Sri Ramakrishna and said, my family is suffering. His father had passed away and leaving the entire family in debt and a terrible condition. He couldn't get a job. So my family is suffering, want of food, and so many problems. Could you ask the Divine Mother, Kali, for taking care of these problems? I know she solves these problems also. And Sri Ramakrishna said, look, I don't ask these things. Why don't you go and ask? Today is a good day. It's a Tuesday. It's the day of the Divine Mother. So why don't you go and ask? He is, sort of pushing him towards that. Narendranath was not willing at first, but Sri Ramakrishna persuaded him, cajoled him into, go and ask. She will listen. And he goes there, comes back after some time, and Sri Ramakrishna says, well, did you ask? He said, yes, when I went there, it was a living presence. But did you ask for money? He said, no, I could not. I asked for knowledge and devotion and dispassion for worldliness. The to show me the difference between the real and the unreal, Viveka, from which his name comes, Vivekananda. And Sri Ramakrishna was, well, that's all right, but did you ask for money? How foolish. Go and ask for money. There's still yet time. And so he sends Narendranath back again. We know the story. He goes, and the second time comes back, and the same thing is repeated. And Sri Ramakrishna says, but you should ask, you wanted money, you should ask for money, go again. Third time, Narendranath is sent back to the temple. Again, he comes back overwhelmed by a living presence of the mother and couldn't ask for money. And of course, this is what Sri Ramakrishna wanted. But, and Narendranath also realized that I understand now this is your play. You are doing this on purpose. And Sri Ramakrishna blessed Narendranath that, all right, I say that your family, your mother and your brothers and sisters, they will not lack simple food and clothing, The simple wants of life, they will not. He didn't bless them that you're going to become millionaires or anything like that. But they will not suffer from poverty. That much he blessed. And he was so delighted. He kept telling people, Naren has accepted, he literally said Kali, which means Naren has accepted Shakti, God as in the form of the Divine Mother, as the power of this universe. Isn't it great? And people, I think, I sort of construe it in my mind, they must have been a little puzzled because what exactly is Kali and what's the significance of Narendranath accepting Kali? It's not very clear to us, but as long as Sri Ramakrishna is happy, must be a good thing. So I guess they all said, yes, it's great. And it was great. The significance of accepting Kali, the significance of accepting Shakti is, as I said, it's manifested in the whole life of Vivekananda. He said that she made me a slave. He didn't want to do this work. Sri Ramakrishna said, your very bones will make you do this work. This is the whole plan of the Divine Mother. In fact, later Swami Vivekananda would say that I am convinced of it, that Kali had worked up the body of Sri Ramakrishna for this. These are his words. Had worked up the body of Sri Ramakrishna for her purposes. So it was the divine play of the Divine Mother, this entire Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Ma Sharada, and today what we are sitting here today. So it's unfolding. He came to this country, and in 1895, as I said, in the summer of 1895, he gave some of his most inspired teachings, and they've been collected in that small book, Inspired Talks. One day, he spoke of the Divine Mother. And so I'm going to read out. He said 10 things. And I'm going to just talk about those 10 things he said about the Divine Mother, especially one thing. He said, this is 2nd July 1895. It was a Tuesday. I think he chose it on purpose. It's associated with the worship of Shakti, the Divine Mother. He said, Shaktas, that means the worshippers of Shakti are called Shaktas. Worshippers of Shiva are called Shaiva. Worshippers of Vishnu are called Vaishnava. These are different forms in which God is worshipped. Shaktas worship the universal energy as mother, the sweetest name they know. Mother is the first manifestation of power and is considered a higher idea than father. This is the second thing he says. With the name of mother comes the idea of Shakti, divine energy and omnipotence. Just as the baby believes its mother to be all-powerful, able to do anything. And this was the relationship which Sri Ramakrishna established with God, mother and child. You see, this is one idea that the ancient Hindus came upon, that God being infinite can be worshipped in infinite ways, which Sri Ramakrishna would often say later on, as many paths, so many faiths, as many faiths, so many paths to God. Infinite reality, infinite paths, or infinite ways to an infinite reality. That's, by the way, the name of a new book about to be published by Oxford University Press on Sri Ramakrishna's approach to God. It's going to be released this month. Infinite reality, infinite paths. The ancient Hindus realized you can approach God as Father, which is what people in the West are very comfortable with, an Abrahamic idea, God as Father, but also God as Mother. Sometimes I'm asked to give talks introducing Hinduism to school students. They have courses in religion. And I say to them, look, Hinduism is so diverse that whatever you say about Hinduism is both true and false. Whatever you say about Hinduism, the answer will be yes and no. Do Hindus believe in God? Yes and no. There are philosophies which are not openly theistic, at least. Is God with form in Hinduism? Yes and no. Is God male? Is God in the form of a man? God is male? Yes and no. God can be female also. God can be in the form of... It's a very powerful tradition in ancient India to worship God as mother. And the whole idea was that, in Vivekananda's words, in spiritual life, we try to divinize our human relationships. That is to see God in everybody, in all human beings, in all beings. And to humanize our divine relationship. Your relationship to God is humanized. Humanized means you have a relationship of father or mother or child. God is your child. Which is why the baby Krishna or the baby Jesus is worshipped. Or lover, or friend, or a peaceful, impersonal principle in non-dual Vedanta, for example. So all these relationships are possible. And Sri Ramakrishna, among all of them, Sri Ramakrishna explored all of them. But his basic tendency, fundamental approach to God was mother and child. She is my mother and I am the child. The third thing which he says, the Divine Mother is the Kundalini sleeping in us. Without worshipping her, we can never know ourselves. To unpack this sentence would take a full talk. But let us just enough to say that the whole of Kundalini Yoga, everything, it originates here. That by worshipping God, the Kundalini, God as mother, Kundalini is awakened within us, and that leads to self-realization. Then he goes on to say, she is the sum total of the energy of the universe. Every manifestation of power in the universe is mother. She is life, she is intelligence, she is love, she is in the universe, yet separate from it. This is an important thing. Sri Ramakrishna saw the Divine Mother everywhere. I was reading in one of the wonderful collections which revered Maharaj has made about the reminiscences of Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda, in one place, he says that Keshav Sen, the great reformer and leader of the Brahmo Samaj, who was very close to Sri Ramakrishna. Now, Keshav Sen had traveled widely, and he was important because he had actually gone across the seas to England and met the Queen of England. You can imagine how prestigious that was in colonized India at that time. So, Sri Ramakrishna says to Keshav Sen that you have gone over all the world, you have traveled across oceans and lands and seen so many things. But have you not seen my mother who pervades all these things? In Bengali, Jagod jure amar maa ke dakhoni. Have you not seen my mother who is in all things, who pervades this universe? And Swami Vivekananda ji goes on to say, after that, he says that, go ahead in spiritual life, do not be satisfied with a little realization. Very soon you will see a divine radiance filling the entire universe. Now this immediately reminds me of, in Sri Ramakrishna's first vision of the Divine Mother. If you recollect that dramatic incident, how it was 1856, I think, where in the temple of Kali in Dakshineshwar, he is appointed the priest, and he sees this remarkable, it's an extraordinary image, those who have seen it there. And he is devoured by this passion, this intense desire. Is she real? Is she just an image? Is she living? Is she real? Can I experience God? Can I see God? And his first approach is very important, because before all the meditation, all the mantras, all the Vedanta, all the Tantra, all the teachers coming, before all of that, he first takes the heaven by storm, by simple passion for God, simply by crying for God. He would we read how he would throw himself on the bank of the river Ganga and rub his face on the ground, crying that, "Mother, one more day is gone as the sun would set on the western horizon. One more day is gone and I have not seen thee." And people who would gather around this young priest would think he's mad, or he's a poor village boy, misses his mother who's in the village. Maybe he's crying for his mother who's in the village. And finally he had the vision of the mother in the temple. And the vision was very interesting. His description was a white radiance. First vision was formless, a formless, infinite radiance of awareness, being, pervading the entire universe. After that, he sees the form of the Divine Mother. He says the blissful form of the Divine Mother after that. And here it is, this one reality filling the entire universe. But, and here it sounds a lot like non-dualism, Advaita Vedanta. But immediately after that, Swami Vivekananda says, she is a person. She is a person and can be seen and known. And he says, as Sri Ramakrishna saw and knew her. You see, when we talk about Vedanta, especially Advaita Vedanta, there are two problems which arise. One, it seems like an impersonal principle. We talk about pure being, pure awareness, witness consciousness. Not at all like a human being or a person. And the personal God is accepted by Advaita Vedanta, but given a lower status, that you go beyond God. That as our own reality is this witness consciousness, not body, not mind, the witness of body and mind, similarly, the God of the universe, the reality of the God of the universe is that what Meister Eckhart called the ground of God, existence, pure being, pure awareness. That's what Advaita moves towards. It's the highest conclusion of the Upanishads. But somehow you get the feeling it tends to leave religion and theism and the personal loving God, relationship with God, it tends to leave them all behind. That's the sense you get. And does not make much of the personal God. Whereas here Swami Vivekananda says, she is a person. So God is a person also. Sri Ramakrishna related to the Divine Mother as mother, like you would go to your own mother and talk to her. He would actually talk to God. And he would, when somebody was skeptical, he would say, but she talks to me. Kotha kohe je. And Narendranath, of course, was a skeptic. He said, it happens like that. If you think too much about something, you start seeing these things, So, but she's a person. You can relate to God as a person, the personal God. And Swami Vivekananda in another place says that I am firmly convinced that there is this power in the universe which thinks of itself as a person and of itself as female, as mother. The great medieval German mystic, Meister Eckhart, he says in one place, I wonder, what does God do all day long? What does God do all day long? And look at the answer. The answer seems incongruous, but now it will make sense. The answer is, I realized he lies on this great maternity bed and gives birth all day long. Now it seems a little incongruous because the language, the gender, man, he, father. But that's basically God of religion, the creator of the entire universe. The moment you say mother, it makes perfect sense. Because we are all the children, the creation of this one Divine Mother. And she sees herself as a person and as our mother. The Holy Mother is to say, if you have nobody in this world, know for sure that you have a mother. Know for sure. Even if you have nobody else in the world, know for sure that you have a mother. She is a person and can be known as Sri Ramakrishna saw and knew her. Sixth, established in the idea of mother, we can do anything. She quickly answers prayer. A very important point. I'll make a quick observation about this. That he said in the West, In the West, here I have taught only the Upanishads. There is enough in the Upanishads for the liberation of humanity. You want moksha, liberation, enlightenment, freedom, salvation, whatever you wanted, Vedanta can give it to you. Non-dual Vedanta can give it to you, and that's enough. But then Swami Vivekananda said, Kali worship is my special fad. It's a secret that shall die with me. It's not something that I'm teaching openly. But he mentioned that if you want to do something in the world, you need the blessings of Shakti, or you need the blessings of Kali. So he had a mission to fulfill in the world. That's why this connection with Kali. Otherwise, non-dual Vedanta for your individual freedom is enough. It can take you there. Look at what he says here. Established in the idea of mother, we can do anything. And also, he says, she quickly answers prayer. This is one thing I've seen among senior monks. When somebody approaches with some problem, they invariably say, pray to God, or pray to Sri Ramakrishna, pray to Thakur. But if somebody is really, really in trouble, really weeping and crying, I've seen this again and again, they will sort of, as if giving a little secret, pray to mother. Pray to mother. I have seen in the main monastery in Belur Math, the big temple of Sri Ramakrishna, of course very popular, many, many people go there, but often I've seen people go there, bow down, and then they go straight, make a beeline for the temple of the mother, which is a much more modest structure on the bank of the river. And there people I have seen, they sit there and meditate and cry and weep. So this idea that mother answers prayer much more easily, much more quickly, much more leniently than father. Father is stern. Father listens, but stern. We get what we deserve. And father is just. But mother is a soft touch. So if you nag her enough, you will get at least some of what you ask for. And, well, I'll leave it at that. The wise, those who have ears will hear. So this is a very important thing. Another thing I just missed over here, when Swami Vivekananda says, she is intelligent, she is love, she is life, she is in the universe, yet separate from it. In Advaita Vedanta, one tendency you might have noticed is, here is this world, it's an appearance. Here is the body, I am not the body. Here is prana, life. It's an object, an experience. I am not it. I am the witness of that. Here is mind and intelligence. I am not it. I am the witness of that. I am the pure consciousness apart from witness of material universe, the physical body, the vital body, the mental body, the intellectual body. Annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha. We note it and we dismiss it. Neti, neti, neti. But it sometimes seemed to me a little one-sided. There is spiritual significance in matter. There is spiritual significance in life. There is spiritual significance in mind and intelligence. This is what the path of Shakti emphasizes. Don't dismiss it casually. See God in those things also. See God in life. See God in physical matter, in the being of the universe. As Sri Ramakrishna says to Keshab Chandra Sen, you have seen so many things across the world. Did you not see my mother in all of them? So Advaita Vedanta tends to shoot up like a rocket to the transcendent, leave everything behind. But that way you miss the scenic route. The scenic route is to see God in everything. I often feel that when you look at the fall colors, you're lucky here. I saw in Missouri, in Kansas, you see the full bloom of the fall colors, at least this year. Somehow, New York, we haven't got it this time. And there's actually an article about it. How did we skip fall in New York? In this magnificence which you see around you, there is divinity there. The Swami who was there in New York before me, Swami Tathagatanandaji, somebody called him the Wild Man of Vedanta. Those of you who know him, you will understand why he was called that. But one thing he kept on stressing, and when he would stress, he would really stress. He would hammer the podium with a big fist. God in life, God manifested in all living beings. Life itself is God. Now, his approach was not a dialectical approach where he would take you step by step to that, so to just leave it hanging there. His way of arguing with you was yelling at you. So But this thing he emphasized again and again and again. And I have the clear feeling he must have had a realization and a spiritual awakening to the divinity in all life. He told it consistently over the decades, that to see God in all life. You say, forget pure consciousness, pure being, and forget all that. See life all around you. There is God here. He would say that again and again and again. This is the approach of seeing God in the Divine Mother as Shakti. 7th point. Okay. She can show herself to us in any form at any moment. Divine Mother can have form, Rupa, and name, Nama, or name without form. This half phrase, this just a half, less than half a sentence, name without form. I will come back to it again. This is actually the main thing I want to talk about today. I haven't started yet. I'll come back to it. Name without form. And as we worship her in these various aspects, as name and form or name without form, we can rise to pure being, having neither form nor name. So through the worship of the Divine Mother, beyond to Brahman, pure existence, consciousness, bliss. This is 7th point. And I'll come back to that one phrase, name without form. The 8th point. The sum total of all the cells in an organism is one person, so each soul is like one cell, and the sum of them is God, and beyond that is the Absolute. The sea calm is the Absolute. The same sea in waves is Divine Mother. Brahman and Kali. That's why Sri Ramakrishna, this is literally, he's translating Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna would say Kali and Brahman are the same thing. One is the calm sea and one is the sea in motion. It's exactly the same thing. She is time, space, and causation. God is mother and has two natures, the conditioned and the unconditioned. That sounds very philosophical, but literally, the conditioned is this. This is the conditioned form of the Divine Mother. And the unconditioned form of the Divine Mother is the absolute, existence, consciousness, bliss. What the Swami said at the beginning of the chant, the 4 salutations, Namastasya, 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 and Namo Nama, the 4 salutations. First salutation is to Divine Mother in the form of this physical universe. The second salutation is to the Divine Mother in the form of subtle universe. You say, what is the subtle universe? Thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas, intuitions, intelligence. That's the subtle universe within us. Second salutation. Third salutation is to the causal aspect of the universe, what is called the avyakta or the manifest, from which comes the subtle and the gross universe. And the fourth one is to the Divine Mother beyond causality. Beyond causality. Cause and effect. Universe has a cause and there's an effect. Beyond causality is existence, consciousness, bliss, the Absolute. So these are the aspects of the Divine Mother. As the conditioned, she is God, nature, and soul. So as the conditioned Brahman, Divine Mother is God. The God of religion is none other than Divine Mother. And the universe is none other than Divine Mother. And individual beings like us, we are also actually one with the Divine Mother. And as the unconditioned, she is unknowable and unknown. Out of the unconditioned came the Trinity, God, nature, and soul, the triangle of existence. This is the Vishishtadvaitist idea. As I said, whole chapters can be written on this paragraph itself. 9th point. A bit of mother, a drop was Krishna, another was Buddha, another was Christ. So this is the whole mystery of the incarnation of God. God coming as avatar. And from the Shakta point of view, it's an ocean which is the Divine Mother, and a drop of that ocean is the incarnation of God. Rama or Krishna or Buddha or Christ. So they are drops of the ocean. That is, if they are a drop, imagine what the Divine Mother is. The mystery of incarnation of God, the mystery of avatar. There's an old joke which goes, if we are all children of God, what was special about Jesus? Son of God. So suppose we are all children of God. But there is something special about Jesus. This is what is explained in the mystery of incarnation. And this thing becomes more acute in Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, where we are all Brahman. Everything is Brahman. So what's so special about an incarnation? What's special about Krishna or Christ or Ramakrishna? That's why when Sri Ramakrishna said to Vivekananda that he who was Rama, he who was Krishna is in this body, Ramakrishna, but not in your Advaitic sense. In your Advaitic sense, everybody is Brahman. We are all Brahman. But there is a special sense in which avatars, incarnations of God, are different from the rest of us. In this very book, Inspired Talks, Swami Vivekananda says at the beginning that nature has two kinds of products, two kinds of creation. Nature, that means Prakriti or the Divine Mother. One is this universe and us, sentient beings and the universe. That's one kind of product. And then he says there is a special creation which nature undergoes once in a while, which is the incarnation of God, avatara, indicating thereby the incarnation is a separate mystery altogether. One sentence, you could go on talking about it. And the last thing he said here, the worship of even one spark of the mother in our earthly mother leads to greatness. Worship her if you want love and wisdom. So just little more than one page. And as I said, you could write a volume on it. Now I'll go back in the time remaining to me. It's a difficult topic. I've been avoiding it, but we have to get around to it. I'll go back to that one phrase he used, that the Divine Mother can be name without form. Name without form. The whole mystery of the mantra. Why I want to dwell on it today is many of us here, though we read Vedanta, we are interested, we listen to talks and think about it, but many of us here are initiated into the practice of a mantra. Ishta Devata, the chosen form of God, and the repetition of a mantra. So this is the right occasion to talk about it. Shakti of Brahman, Divine Mother Shakti, and the relationship. What is the special practice and how is it related to mantra? So this is what I'm going to talk about in the time remaining to me. For this, we shall have to go further afield to a philosophy which I don't think I've mentioned in my talks, which we normally do not talk about, a magnificent system of thought related to Vedanta but different from it. It is the Kashmiri Shaivism system, the system of Kashmiri Shaivism. So in that system, which reached its climax maybe a century or two after Shankara in Kashmir, in that system the highest reality is called Shiva. Highest reality is called Shiva. And Shakti, the Divine Mother, is the power of Shiva. The highest reality is not in, as in Vedanta we say Sat Chit Ananda, existence, being, awareness, bliss, or being, existence, consciousness, bliss. In the Kashmiri Shaiva system, Prakasha Vimarsha Swarupa. Prakasha means awareness, pure awareness, consciousness. Vimarsha is an interesting term that they use, which is not used in Advaita. Vimarsha means this pure consciousness, which is Shiva, is aware of itself, self-aware, not just illumining everything as in Advaita Vedanta, but also reflexively aware, I am Shiva, I am the limitless Shiva. This self-awareness is called Vimarsha, Prakasha Vimarsha. So this is the essential nature of Kashmiri Shaivism. It's a vast and complicated system. If you think Vedanta is difficult, try reading Kashmiri Shaivism. It's enormously complicated, but very sophisticated. One great philosopher, Arindam Chakravarti, he told me, Swami, if you want to understand Sri Ramakrishna, study Kashmiri Shaivism. What concerns us today is this. Kashmiri Shaivism has 4 approaches to enlightenment. 4 approaches to enlightenment. The highest, it's hierarchical. The highest is called no path, Anupaya, no method. So that we don't talk about, you cannot talk about that. What that means is sometimes people spontaneously awaken. There are cases like that. But you can't wait around for that. When am I going to awaken spontaneously? That is very rare. So that is called anupaya, that is set aside. There's nothing to talk about there anyway. By the great grace of God or Guru, one may awaken, but that's different. So the highest method they talk about, their central text is called Shiva Sutras, the Sutras of Shiva. In that, the three other ways they talk about are the Shambhava Upaya, which is the way of Shiva. Shambhu is one of the names of Shiva. So Shambhava Upaya, the way of Shiva. Shakta Upaya, the way of Shakti or the Divine Mother. And the third one is called Anva Upaya, the way of the individual sentient being, us. So Anu is the word used in Kashmiri Shaivism. Anu literally means the unit or the atom, the point, the dot. So just this limited being which we are. 3 ways. The most advanced and direct way, Shambhava Upaya, the way of Shiva. What is it? I can see many people are curious. That's the way for me. That's nothing. When you read it, it's very, very close to Advaita Vedanta. It's almost the same as non-dual Vedanta. The first sutra of the Shiva Sutras is Chaitanyam Atma. Atma, the self, you are pure consciousness. It starts with that, with some pointers to that, and you're supposed to realize it. Realize consciousness by consciousness. And if you see the sutras there, they are all very similar to, there's a lot of similarity with non-dual Vedanta. But the thing is this. When I have talked about non-dual Vedanta for the last few years I've been teaching here, one common question which I come up against is this. Swami, I listened to the talks, I read the books, and I understand it too. But what do I do now? What's next? This is one form of the question. The other form of the question is, I understand what you are saying, Swami, but my life is not changing. I'm still suffering. I'm still the same person. How do I realize this? If you ask that question, then Advaita Vedanta has not worked for you. You're not even supposed to ask that question. The pointers are supposed to be enough for us to awaken. Now, what will happen if you go to a non-dualist, an Advaitin teacher, the pure, strict non-dualist teacher, and say this? You know what the answer is? The answer is, the method is hearing, reflecting and meditating, Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana. It's not working. Not working. Repeat. I've been repeating 30 years, 40 years. Better luck next life. I actually heard a great teacher, a contemporary non-dualist teacher. He said this. Because there is no other way in the strict monastic Advaitic non-dual Vedanta. The truth is here, it's being told to us. We listen to it, we argue it out if we have got doubts, and we try to settle down on it. Not working. Keep trying. Not working. Next life. There are many lives ahead of you. Now, in Kashmiri Shaivism, what they will do is, the way of Shiva, not working. Okay, step down. Take the help of the Divine Mother, Shakti. How does it work? What is the problem? Why does the way of Shiva not lead to enlightenment? Why does non-dual Vedanta, why does it not work instantaneously? It should work instantaneously. One of the attractions of the non-dual path is that it seems, I will say within quotes, it seems to be effortless, instantaneous. And who doesn't want an effortless and instantaneous way? But it doesn't seem to work. So why does it not work? They analyze it. In Kashmiri Shaivism, they will not say better luck next time. Said, yes, we have something more for you. They'll open another drawer and take out something else. Here is something for you. Now, as we go from the way of Shiva to the way of the Divine Mother, it will seem to become much more complicated. Remember, the truth is not complicated. We are complicated. So our problems are complicated, and therefore the solutions also become more and more complicated. The way of Shiva, simple and direct. The way of Shakti, complex. The way of the Jiva, Anva Upaya, most complex. So what is the way of Shakti basically? What is the problem? They analyze the problem in this way. What happens, if you try to settle down, I have understood Vedanta, I am Brahman. If you try to settle down there, what will happen? Thoughts keep coming to the mind. Simple. Swami Prabhavananda ji in his book, Sermon on the Mount According to Vedanta, when he's talking about blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. He says, try this. What do you mean by pure of heart? How do I know I'm not pure of heart? Try this. Make up your mind, I'm going to think about God. Only about God and nothing else, in whatever form you're used to. Settle down seriously, quietly, and try it. Within a minute, within 2 minutes, you will find other thoughts crowding. Almost all people have this experience. This is the sign of the impurity of the heart. So they call it Ashuddha, they call it Vikalpa in Kashmiri Shaivism. Vikalpa means thought construct. The mind starts chattering away. Very natural. It's the very life of the mind to think. So thoughts keep coming. Vikalpa. Now what is the way in Kashmiri Shaivism? They say, all right, these Vikalpas are there and you cannot remove them. Now the way is generate what they call Shuddha Vikalpa, a pure thought construct. What is the nature of the pure thought construct? Same as the original teaching of Kashmiri Shaivism, non-dualism. I am the limitless Shiva. Abhinava Gupta, great Kashmiri Shaivite teacher, he says, Vishwottirna Vishwatmacha, transcending this physical universe and the essence immanent in this physical universe, that Shiva I am. This will be the structure of the pure thought construct. Now the question is, this pure thought construct, can it really capture Shiva, the ultimate reality? Can you think your way to realization? And the answer is no, you cannot. No thought can reveal the ultimate reality. Abhinava Gupta gives a classic example. He says, you might as well ask a pot kept out in the bright sunlight. Ask the pot, illumine the sun. Impossible. It's a crazy idea. It's just the opposite. It's the sun which illumines the pot. The pot has absolutely no way of illumining the sun. And neither is it necessary to. Similarly, to say the mind can capture my ultimate reality, Shiva, it won't work. Then what will this Shuddha Vikalpa do? What is the purpose of this practice? Two things. I will quickly race through this. I think we have got a little Q&A afterwards. So if you have got doubts, you can ask that. So it goes like this. 2 functions, negative function, positive function. The negative function of this practice is the illusion of duality is to be removed. Abhinava Gupta says, Swarupa akhyati matra dvaitam. He says, Dvaita adhivasam, Swarupa akhyati matram. But what it means is, this experience of a dualistic universe is only due to the non-apprehension of our non-dual self. It is there, but we don't see it as it is. That's why we experience this. So this Shuddha Vikalpa, this practice, will only remove this error. It will, look at the difference. It will not catch hold of Shiva. It will remove the ignorance that we are not Shiva. That's the negative function of the Shuddha Vikalpa. What is the actual practice? The practice has 3 aspects. Mantra Shakti, number 1, the power of the mantra. The second one is called Bhavana, Sattarka, that's a technical term, Bhavana, which means meditation. And the third one is Shuddha Vidya, pure knowledge, what they call enlightenment. So the practice has 3 aspects: mantra, meditation, enlightenment. How does the mantra work? It works like this. As Swami Vivekananda said, the Divine Mother is everything. What do you mean by everything? There are 2 aspects of everything. Forms, what you experience in the universe. And names, the conceptualization that we do in our minds about those objects. Whatever you experience is called Rupa. And the way you grasp it in your mind, the conceptualization here, the language used for that is called Nama. So the Divine Mother is both Rupa and Nama, the thing itself and the concept in your mind. The concept is always expressed in language. So the Divine Mother manifests herself in language. So the entirety of language is generated by letters. I'm going fast now. The entirety of language is generated by letters. And the set of letters, the Sanskrit alphabet, is called Matrika. Matrika. So this Matrika is none other than the Divine Mother, none other than Shakti, manifested as language. And language expresses or enables us to experience the universe of forms. The universe and our language are coextensive. I remember one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, Wittgenstein, in his classic gnomic text, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, he begins, almost at the very beginning, he says, "The limits of my language are the limits of the universe." Universe and language, name and form, they go together. Now, we do not recognize the Divine Mother in all these forms. And we think language is ordinary. This ordinary language ties us to this ordinary world. We do not see the divinity in either of them. What the mantra Shakti does is, it says that language is divine. And to see the divinity in language, to use the divinity inherent, divine power, Shakti inherent in the very letters, each letter has a divine Shakti inherent in it. So mantras are generated out of these letters. And the entirety of the Sanskrit alphabet, it means that I am that limitless consciousness. How does it do so? It's incredible. We never think about that way. If you know Sanskrit a little bit also, it'll be amazing to you. But even without that, we can grasp. See, here is a secret. In the Sanskrit alphabet, also in many Indian alphabets, it starts with A. The first is not A, it's A. The most primitive sound is A. And the last one is Ha. If you see the whole alphabet, it starts with A and ends with Ha. Now, A is the mantra for Shiva, according to the science of mantras in the Way of Shakti. A is the mantra for Shiva, is the bija mantra for Shiva. And Ha is the mantra for Vimarsha Shakti, the Divine Mother. And in between these two letters, A and Ha, the last one, in between are all the other letters. All letters. A and Ha, if you put them together, and the dot is put there, it is called Aham. And those who know Sanskrit or a little bit also, you know what Aham means? I. The word for I, the vertical I, the word for I, the subject, me, I, is Aham. And they show that in between, in Aham, is all other letters of the language. And from those letters comes all language, all names. And those names represent the entire universe. So the word Aham, which means you, the you or I, the person, it includes in it the source of the entire universe. That's the way they think about it. So all names corresponding to all entities in the universe are encompassed in that word Aham. The word Aham, I, the mystical meaning of that is pure consciousness, Shiva, starting with A, coming down to Ha, in the entire process, manifests as everything in the universe. The cause of the universe, the subtle universe, and the physical universe. But the Swami said that the 4 salutations, so Shiva manifests as the cause, as the subtle universe, as the gross universe, and does so by the power of Shakti, the Divine Mother. So Aham, it sounds complicated, but actually is only one idea going through all of it, that language is mystical. It runs much deeper than what we think. We use it for referring to this world. And they say using language in its ordinary sense traps us in samsara. Using language in this mystical sense will free us from samsara. Now the Guru gives you a mantra, like we have all got, most of us. And that mantra is generated from this matrika, from this set of mystical letters. And this mantra refers to one or the other forms of the Divine Mother. In some form, the Ishta Devata. It could be male, it could be female, it could be beyond gender. And as we repeat that mantra, the mind and the personality becomes divinized. And the divinity inherent in that mantra reveals itself. The repetition of the mantra goes into the second stage, which is called bhavana. Bhavana is a meaning, there's no good English equivalent for it. It means meditation. Abhinavagupta says, what is meditation? He says it's a kind of imagination. The difference is what already exists and yet is not evident to me is made evident by this process. There's a difference between imagination and meditation. Imagination is when I imagine Harry Potter or Superman or Batman. It's a product of the artist's imagination, author's imagination. It's not really out there. But bhavana is something already here. We don't see it. The mystic sees it and gives us a practice so that it can become clear to us. So one translation was creative imagination to grasp an already existing but unseen reality. But the word bhavana. And then it manifests itself as our real nature, as the Ishtadevata. That is called Shuddha Vidya, the third aspect of the practice. And then what happens is the difference between knower, known, and known, and knowledge. Knower, known, and knowledge. It disappears into one uniform awareness. That is the realization of I am Shiva, or in Advaita Vedanta, Aham Brahmasmi. I think I've run out of time. So I will conclude here. Shakti, they call it Shaktopai in Kashmiri Shaivism, a very powerful means to enlightenment, especially relevant for us, because actually many of us, we practice that. We don't often speak about it, but this is in essence the science behind the practice that we all do. I will conclude with the peace chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you.
I generally speak. I don't get chance to listen, but today I listened. Swami Sarvapriyananda justified his name. Sarva means all. Priya means dear. He is dear to all. I think his guru gave a good name during his sannyas. Many of you have heard his talks in YouTube. Many of his lectures are there. I sometimes, in Laguna Beach, when I cook, sometimes I turn on his tape and I listen and I cook. Very good topic, and he explained very well. And this Shakti, the Divine Mother, the way he started, is really a mysterious phenomenon. We live inside the Shakti, but we do not know the power of the Shakti. That power comes from the Mother, the source. Sri Ramakrishna talked about this Shakti and Brahman to Keshav Chandra Sen, if you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna. He mentioned the Brahmins did not believe God with form. Their concept of God is just Christian concept of God. God without form, but all powers. All power, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, all powerful, full of grace. That is the concept. God has no form. So anyhow, but Sri Ramakrishna proved God is both God with form and without form. He said that Swami Sri Ramakrishna's message is all-inclusive. He was thinking Narendra was a Brahmo and he will go and preach only that God without form. That is not my philosophy. I am both. We should not be one-sided. So it is a great victory for Sri Ramakrishna that Swami Vivekananda admitted the Shakti, power. So I am glad that he covered very well and explained very well and brought that in Shaivism. Some of the things are very, very important in our spiritual life. Anyhow, so I thank my brother Swami Sarvapriyananda to come, and I hope he will come again. And we shall give you maybe 20 minutes because he will have to go to New York. His flight is after 3:45. So after lunch, he will run to the airport. But we shall give you 20 minutes. You can ask him questions. We shall put chairs here. And please put the microphone. And you can ask questions. He will answer. It will be in YouTube. Tonight, he will put in YouTube tonight. He will say tomorrow. Please ask questions.
Yes, please do ask.
And do you need the microphone?
No.
Please, can you speak a little louder? Then we will find. Anybody ask any question?
Yes, there is.
You would like to think that Wittgenstein knew something about Vedanta, and in your explanation, you talked about the divinity of language. He talked about the limit of language. Can you talk a little bit about it?
True. If you
the question,
right,
you
the question was that one would like to think that Wittgenstein knew something about Vedanta or was speaking about something akin to Vedanta. But right now, I spoke about the divinity of language, which is a very beautiful way of putting what I was trying to talk about. Whereas Wittgenstein spoke about the limits of language. So would I care to comment on that? Yes, I would. Wittgenstein is an extraordinary figure. Ludwig Wittgenstein, he was German or Austrian rather, from Vienna. Maybe the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. And his first book, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, if you see it, it's a tiny little book and organized 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, just sentences, 1.1, 1.1.1, like that, in a very mathematical fashion, a bit like Spinoza's work. And the introduction will give you a taste of the man. He says, what is here, what I have understood, if you have understood that, if you know what I'm talking about, it will make sense to you. Otherwise, it will make no sense to you, what I'm going to talk about in this book. And I couldn't care less. He writes that. So that, I don't know how you expect to sell books if you say that at the beginning. Don't understand, and I don't care if you don't understand. Almost at the beginning, he makes a statement which I quoted, that the limits of language are the limits of the universe. And at the end, he makes the famous statement. The thing is, he does not explain. At the end, he says, that which is beyond language, we must pass over in silence. And I don't know if it's in the Tractatus or somewhere else, he said, and that is the mystical. He actually said that. Now, what was specifically his point of view? Debatable. How much did he know about Vedanta? I don't think he knew much about Vedanta. There's not much record. Though in Vienna, the Vienna circle, the early positivists and all, Wittgenstein was a well-known figure there. I remember reading they had a discussion of Tagore at one time, Tagore's philosophy. So there is some Vedanta there, definitely. Yes, the limits of language. But have you noticed something? Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, basically keeps on harping on the limits of language. The ultimate reality is beyond language, cannot be expressed by language. And Shankara goes into great detail in his commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad Bhashya. In that he expresses, the Mandukya Upanishad in the 7th mantra says, Abhyapadeshyam, unnameable. The ultimate reality is beyond name. Why unnameable? And Shankara gives a long discussion about that. If you're interested, I have a talk, Advaita Vedanta and the Paradox of Language. Why that ultimate reality is ineffable, beyond language. So Shankara goes into details there. What can language do? And why it will not work on that ultimate reality. And so ultimate reality, Brahman, has to be beyond language. But then also, the problem remains, if the ultimate reality is beyond language, what are the scriptures, Upanishads, Vedas, or any scriptures? They're language. So the language has to express something which cannot be expressed by language. You see the problem? And so the various strategies adopted by Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, to express something which cannot be expressed by language. You would think, how can they do that? Oh, there are ways of getting around it. For example, we all know about neti-neti, not this, not this. What is neti-neti? If I cannot speak about it, I can at least say what it is not. That is basically not neti-neti. By indicating what it is not, I can use language to indicate what it is not. I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about what it is not. Then, what is the result? You would be expected to grasp an intuitive flash what it is, and I am that reality. You will be expected to grasp that. That is the technique. That's one strategy. There are about half a dozen strategies used by Vedanta. There is the strategy of paradox, further than the furthest, nearer than the nearest, greater than the greatest, smaller than the smallest. That which is night to the awakened is day to the unenlightened. That which is night to the unenlightened is day to the awakened. What is it? What do you mean by that? There's a very precise meaning, but it has to be grasped intuitively. So Advaita Vedanta keeps on dwelling about the inability of language to express that. At the most, language can point towards it. Whereas, you are very right, what I talked about today was a different approach altogether. The approach of Shakta Upaya in Kashmiri Shaivism, which is a step down from the way of Shiva. The way of Shakti is that language can help us. It is language which binds us to a delusional reality. And language can help us to set us free from it. So, but there also, Abhinavagupta points out, can language help us to grasp that ultimate reality? Actually, no. The role that language serves here is negative. It removes the delusion of duality. And the reality, Shiva, shines forth. But you will notice one thing, I'll just end with this, that Advaita Vedanta did not go ahead and develop this extremely ornate, mystical theory of language. No. They just said language can't do it. And so we have certain strategies and finished. Whereas this one, it develops, it is very mystical. So it uses language as a tool. I might mention here the definition of mantra. I forgot to mention that. We often say mantra, mananat trayate mantra. That which you contemplate, it saves you. If you contemplate that, it saves you. But Abhinavagupta gives a deeper interpretation. Contemplating it, saving you. What does it mean? He says in the Tantra Sara, para tattva sfuratta atmakam manana dharmata bhedamaya samsara prashamatmaka trana dharmata cha asya niruchyate. Mantra is said to have these two characteristics. One is, by contemplating it, the reality, paratattva, the ultimate reality, sphuratta, it shines forth, it is revealed to us. And the other quality of mantra is bhedamaya samsara prashamana. This world of fractured universe we live in, the universe of limitations and dualities, this ceases. This is quietened. Prashamana means it's quietened. This is the meaning of mantra. Very, very, very powerful meaning. Yeah. Yes.
Another question?
Right behind.
Thank you. Thank you for your teaching.
Thank you.
Could you help me understand the value of Halloween for self-realization?
The value of Halloween for self-realization.
My idea is often on Halloween I'm not wearing any costume, but I'm wearing my work costume, and I'm saying to people, oh, this is my Halloween costume, and people chuckle. And there's an idea there, obviously, I am not my work costume. But then I just learned yesterday that actually, well, maybe I'm not the awareness that I am every moment. Even when I'm not for Halloween, or not when I'm making a joke about Halloween, just every day I am not this self, I'm not this name, this person, this role I'm playing.
Well, you have answered the question, I think. I understand. Yes. I'm just going to repeat what you said. That how do you put it in baseball? It came out of the left field or something. That question. So, but it's interesting. I was just thinking about it yesterday. Halloween has these two qualities. It is disruptive. It disrupts the flow of our ordinary way of thinking, dealing with the world, thinking of ourselves and others. And it's magical. It's magical. It brings an element of magic into our... in the form of little ghosts and witches and all of that, and weird costumes and provocative. Halloween is that. So if you want to spiritualize Halloween, you have to, in fact, that's a very, very good example of Shakta Upaya, the way of Shakti. The way of Shiva or the Advaita Vedanta is very philosophical, abstract, dry. It's not dry for me, but it's how it's characterized. I think it's perfectly fine. But the Shakta Upaya is disruptive. It uses the elements found in this world and to transform. You look at this world in a completely different, magical way. So these two characteristics, disruptive, magical. That's how I see Halloween. And that's what the Shakta Upaya is also all about. It disrupts the normal flow of our dealings with the world and introduces the element of magic into it. I don't know. Yes.
Practical aspect of the Shakta Upaya.
Yes.
So when we are reciting the mantra, is it just enough to just focus on the language instead of imagining it?
No, that the Guru will teach you. Usually what we do is, in our tradition, it's not just the mantra. It's the mantra and the deity associated with it. These two traditions have powerfully developed this. One is the tantric tradition in India. So there are multiple tantric traditions in India. And also the tantric tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. Both of these, they have a common source. Tantra, basically, the mantra, the language, name, and the form. So these two, a mystic form and a mystic language, they are usually associated. So the Guru usually tells us how to visualize the mystic form and to at the same time repeat the mantra. Yes.
Swami, so then when you talk
Got
about...
up. Loudly, please.
I'll try something. So the name without form, can you talk a little more about that?
That's what I talked about.
No, but in the context of the mantra. Because
Yeah.
when you say the tantric tradition, you're saying the mantra with the form.
Usually. But it can be without the form also. Some people just chant the mantra. Even in Advaita Vedanta, Panchadashi, the teacher speaks about how to calm the mind down. If it's not working, then how to calm the mind down. Dirgha Pranava Ucharana. In one of the chapters in Panchadashi, he says, a prolonged chanting of Om. If you repeat it for a pretty long time, it calms down the mind. So there is a practice of mantra without the form, just the language itself, the mystic syllables. And there's a practice of mantra with the form also. Yes. Yes.
I was thinking it may help me to keep in my mind all the time as I leave the building here. Can I equate silence to non-dualism and language as dualism? And mantra would connect those? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I've never thought about it that way. But yes, it does make sense. Silence is the evocation, is the best expression of the ultimate reality. But the problem is if you keep silent, if the scriptures were not written and the gurus all kept silent and we didn't have Sunday talks and the Swami stood there and kept silent, first time you might think it's very profound, but very soon you'd stop coming. Yes. So one step below silence is the mantra. And one step below the mantra is the talk, is a lecture.
Somebody said silence is the language of God. Everything else is a poor translation.
That is true. Shankaracharya, in his Dakshinamurti Stotra, there's a beautiful sentence. Maunam vyakhyanam, shishyastu chinna samshaya. The Guru teaches in silence. The teaching is in silence, and the doubts of the disciples are dispelled. This you see in the presence of great teachers. Sometimes you come with a question, and you find sometimes the teacher is talking about exactly your question, or you're sitting in silence with the teacher, and after some time the question dissolves. All right. Yes.
Can I ask a non-spiritual question?
All questions, you must have realized the language itself is spiritual, so whatever you ask is spiritual.
I wanted to say, I'm a Bengali and I grew up in Orissa, and
I see.
understand that it was the same for you. And I've often wondered what is it that makes the person who he he or she is. And being so far away from home, I'm very nostalgic about India, and I wanted to know, what was the moment? What was it about you? Was it living closer to the Ramakrishna Mission in Bhubaneswar? What was it in you that made you want to choose this path?
Uh-oh. Personal question. Now, I have, in fact, asked this to, I used to teach young men who had come to become monks in our order. So I taught them for 8 years in Belur Math in the main monastery. So I also wondered this about the young people. Each of them has a fascinating story of how they became a monk. You could fill volumes. So all monks have the fascinating story because it's such a big break in the flow of your life. So always there's something interesting about it. But I found they cleanly, neatly fell into two groups. One group was these young men who led a pretty average, ordinary, like all other young boys, till maybe school or college, when they either read something, met somebody, something happened, or a combination of these, and they suddenly sort of awakened into spiritual life, and they wanted to realize God. So this happened. And many of them were like that. Another group, smaller, they have always been some kind of outliers. They have always been the dreamy kind of kid who never grew up. So I belong to that second group. As far back as I remember, I was fascinated by God and spirituality. In fact, let me tell you an interesting story. After I became a monk, about 12 years after that, I met a cousin from my past life, and she was much older than me. So the first thing she asked me was, "Why did you run away?" And I explained. I saw my parents and her parents, and they were uncles and aunts, and I saw what they did in life. And my feeling was, so if I'm like them, this is what is going to happen to me. Maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. Reasonably, you can't expect anything more. That's exactly how I thought when I was 10 years old, that this is what is going to happen to me. I have seen it. Why should I repeat it? I always felt that. I can see it. Why should I repeat it? I really felt that. And here is Vivekananda. I used to read these books were there at home. Here is Vivekananda saying that God is real and God can be experienced, and the highest purpose of human life is to realize God, experience God. So why not do this? It really pulled me. So that's why I became a monk. Now her answer is very instructive. She said, "Oh, that's what you thought when you saw our parents." I said, "Yes, what did you think?" She said, "I looked at your parents and my parents and I thought, this is great, this is what I want to be." So you see, it is what we call samskaras, a kind of inherent tendency in the mind. You really cannot explain it all by nature or nurture, something carried over from past lives. I think we believe that. Okay, on that personal note, I think we should, do you have a question or observation? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much.